Hello there. Welcome back to The Imperfect Prophet with me, your host, Wonder Wendy. I've got my nice cup of hot tea here because the temperatures have dropped a little bit. It's what we consider chilly here in Arizona and is what I would consider a blessed spring day if I were still back in Vermont. It's funny how different our perspectives are on temperature and daylight and a lot of things, depending on where you are in the world. The other day we were driving down the street and I noticed that one of the Catholic churches had a sign up that said they were having a Christmas Eve Mass outdoors. And we had a little debate over whether that was Christmassy or not, because I grew up in a Currier and Ives Christmas in Vermont. And the idea of being outside in the desert on Christmas Eve doesn't ring as Christmas Eve to me. But then I had that realization that Bethlehem, that place where they say Jesus was born, that's in the desert, isn't it? It's all about perspective. And this time of year, when various cultures celebrate various holidays, but a lot of them have to do with light because this season is right around the winter solstice if you're in the northern hemisphere. Again, look how different it is if you're in a different place. Have you ever looked at pictures of Christmas in the southern hemisphere? Australia, South America, Africa, that's summertime. They're on the other side of the world. I remember one year we went to Argentina for Thanksgiving. That was actually our honeymoon. And Argentina is in the southern hemisphere. So we leave autumn in Vermont, go down to the southern hemisphere, and suddenly we're in springtime and there are blossoms and the days are getting longer. Unfortunately, when we got home, we realized the double-edged sword of that was we'd gotten used to days getting longer. We went back to the days getting really short in Vermont. It was a depressing winter. It was a tough winter. And I resolved, let's never do that again because your body needs to continue one rhythm, and shaking it up by going down to the southern hemisphere may not be the best thing for my body's clock. Those shortening of days. I remember one of my kids, I think it was Becca, in her school, they had a song about the longest night of the year and how that affected people and how you had to deal with the darkness. It was a lot. It wasn't that dark a song, but it was a very solemn, slow song. I remember when I was a kid, there weren't a lot of things we counted down to. Trust me, this will come back to this whole darkness light thing. But one of the few things we counted down to was with an advent calendar. So on December 1st, you open that first calendar. And in the Christian church I attended, we had an Advent wreath and we would light a different candle each week, 4 candles counting down to the Christ candle on Christmas. That was just part of our tradition. So there was this countdown, this build up to Christmas. And then at some point, I heard a pastor explain that Advent is much like a mother about to give birth, again, relating to the Christ story, a very specific Christian centric. But it gave us something to anticipate in these days when the days were darker. Doesn't mean as much to us now that we live in a world of electric lights and electric heat. But imagine a time when you had to burn precious oils or beeswax or something else you had accumulated in order to have light and warmth. Those long nights would be really tough. You probably slept a lot more instead of staying up until midnight and watching Netflix, right? Just saying. I remember recently reading a book that as they were running out of those precious elements you need to have light, they didn't even do stitchery or anything like that because the light was precious and they didn't have it. And even when they did have it, it really wasn't bright enough for the fine needlework this woman wanted to do in this book. So counting down, knowing the days are getting shorter. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, you know this feeling in the middle of what we consider summer, but counting down, expectation, waiting. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, there is that. And for me, the joy of getting through that period is from that time on, the days start to get longer. And you get up a little earlier going, wow, the sun's up. It's so lovely. So what are you counting down to? What are you anticipating? And how do you celebrate that? How do you celebrate your anticipation so that you can remain excited when the days are dark? Because life isn't always sunshine. Life has its cycles, just like our lunar and our solar cycles do. There are times when it feels like everything's really dark. Just yesterday, I encountered a friend who had a friend that committed suicide. That's a person who didn't see an end to the darkness. I have to believe that's the only reason you would do that, is you don't see an end to the darkness. For some people, that's really hard. But I believe that all of us have light in us. And if we shine that light, we can help those people. Will we save everybody? No. But if we all practice the lightness within ourselves and share that light, if we smile, if we work on our tolerance, which isn't easy, trust me, I understand that. There are days when I know I'm not my best self, and it's really hard to not have a knee jerk reaction to somebody saying something you completely disagree with. And as we've discussed, at this point in history, there's a lot of reasons to feel divided. So, how do you count down? How do you say, this is a dark time, but there will be an end to that? There have been dark times before, and I got through them. There will be brightness again. Not always easy, not even remotely. So, if you aren't a Christian and you're not practicing Christmas, or if you're on a Christmas and you do practice Christmas, how can you make that countdown help you get through the darkness? Last week, we talked about advent calendars of a variety of different types, and they are out there. I also remember when I was with the military, a lot of parents, when one of the parents was deployed, for the children to understand mommy or daddy's going to be gone for 35 days or 14 days or 6 months, whatever it might be, they would make chains where each paper chains, I don't know if you ever made paper chains, but if you haven't, they're fun. They're also a great way to decorate your tree. That was one of the decorations we had when I was a kid. But you make a paper chain, and each link represents a day. Every morning or every night, you make a practice of undoing a link, and you see the chain get shorter, and you know the end is coming. Now, there are snafus to that. When a deployment, that is what they call it when the military is sent somewhere, is extended. When the transport that's supposed to bring them home doesn't work, when their particular assignment is extended. And you have to add links to the chain. That's a bummer. But you know what? You still know there's an end coming. Almost always there's an end coming. So plan. We've been talking a lot about planning. And it's not that I'm the most organized person. As you can tell from the clutter behind me, I am not the most organized person. But when I know something's coming up, I always have that little mental countdown. And sometimes I do check marks on the calendar. I haven't done a paper chain in a very long time, but that's another way to do it. Or I open my advent calendar, but I'm bad at those too. Sometimes my advent calendars run until Epiphany because I've forgotten several days. So I get to extend the anticipation just because. I don't know. It's all good. It's all good because there's so many ways to do this. There's so many ways to experience this time in the seasons in our lives. And I want you to find the best way that works for you because it's not about what works for me. Everybody does things differently. We've talked about that over and over again. And yet, every conversation I have out in the real world, there's lots of discussions about tolerance and understanding and different points of view and being accepting. Apparently, we haven't solved this riddle yet. It's an ongoing issue. It requires ongoing reminders. So we're going to keep talking about it until I feel like we've talked about it enough. Maybe we have talked about it enough. I don't know. But it still bears repeating. I'm trying to remember what the solstice feels like, the winter solstice, because it's been a year, that longest night of the year, which doesn't seem quite so dramatic here in Arizona where it never gets cold. It gets Arizona cold, but it never gets really bitter cold. But I do remember as a kid in Vermont, because I'd get on the bus in the dark in the morning, and I'd take that bus in the dark to the school building. And the sun would be coming up about the time I got to school. And then I'd go into the building. There were windows, but it didn't ever feel like you experienced light. And then I'd probably have play practice after school because I was a theater geek. I know that probably surprises you. And by the time I walked out of the school building to either get a ride for my parents or to catch the bus, it was once again dark. I felt like a cave dweller who never got outside and never enjoyed the outdoors. And even when we got to go outside on the weekend, sometimes it was cold. If it was snowing, it was overcast. You still didn't feel like you saw the light. It's a really interesting experience to feel. And I can't imagine how people up in, say, Alaska feel when they have 24 hours of darkness during that time of the year, as opposed to 24 hours of light in the summertime when you get to the summer solstice. Last 2 years ago, I did the summer solstice in Scotland, which is pretty far north, actually, and was shocked that there was still some light in the sky at almost midnight. And then there was some light in the sky again before sunrise, about 3 a.m. in the morning. So there's only really about 3 hours of darkness. But now I know as we approach the winter solstice, they're probably doing the exact opposite. They probably have about 3 hours of daylight in northern Scotland, as opposed to 3 hours of darkness. That's a lot. Now you start to understand why the northern climates have these wonderful stories of ogres and magical beings and everything, because when it's dark that long, and the trees creak and there's a chill in your bones, it's hard to not believe there's something out there or certain. How do you deal with those demons? How do you deal with those demons in the darkness? Because that's what they start to be, unless you're a really chill person. I know some people who are really chill, love the darkness, love the night, love to be out there. But yeah, how do you deal with that darkness? Yeah, we're going back there again because it's so prevalent right now. What can you do to create your own personal light? Do you have a practice that allows you to feel gratitude, illumination, love, generosity? Are you looking for the moments that brighten your life? Not big things. The other day I walked out and that was during that supermoon. Actually, it wasn't during the supermoon, it was the next morning. But I looked up in the western sky and I saw that supermoon coming down towards the earth, or perceiving to. It was gorgeous. And such a weird thing to see the moon first thing in the morning. I know it happens, but so often I don't catch it. But this great, big, beautiful, full circle right on the edge of the horizon. That was a magical moment. And I think we've talked about it before. The moon is not a light source, which is really funny because it's this great, big, bright object in the sky. A really big, bright object in the sky. But it's not a light source. It's a light reflector. Just like when you take a mirror and hold it up, and the light that spreads from that mirror is actually just reflection. The mirror isn't making light. When I was a kid, this is a little digression, but it's fun. I loved flashlights as a kid. Maybe again, because I grew up in the North and we had long nights. Could be. But I would take a flashlight and shine it into the bedroom mirror. Yes, I kept a flashlight under my bed, in my bed, actually. Just sometimes it was for reading, sometimes it was for driving away monsters, or sometimes just because I was trying to figure out how I was going to get to the bathroom because it was dark, whatever. But I had a flashlight in my bed when I was a kid. And I would occasionally play with that flashlight. And if you take a flashlight and you shine it at an object in your mirror, the light will reflect and go directly onto that object, which I know that's just really basic physics. And for those of you that are into sciences, are like, yeah, of course that happens. But when you're a kid, it's like weird magic. I can shine a light on something that's over there, but I'm doing it in the mirror, but the light gets there. Can we do that with ourselves? Can you shine a light on somebody or something that then casts illumination on something else? If I spread a contagious smile, or if you spread a contagious smile, it's contagious because person after person is going to be touched. I'm talking a lot about Christianity today, and I apologize if that offends anybody, but I think there's a lot of great teachings in there. Not that everything is good in Christian churches. They're not. There's inherent problems with any institution and any institution. You have to be careful not to throw out the good with the bad. I grew up with the expression, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which really has nothing to do with throwing out the good with the bad. You don't want to throw out the baby. So it is. Anyway, I'm sorry. I digress there. It had to do with the baby was the last one to use the bathwater, and times when you didn't have indoor plumbing, the water would be so dirty you could accidentally throw out the baby. So be really careful about it. But then it became a cautionary tale of sometimes you get rid of something that seems like it's all bad and all dirty, and there's something good in there. So we don't want to throw out the good with the bad. Anyway, back to my story. There's a lot of stories that almost seem magical in the Bible. Have you ever noticed that? Loaves and fishes and transfiguration and walking on water and all these things. I have to admit, sometimes I'm a skeptic. I don't think so. I don't think so. But one time I heard an explanation of the loaves and fishes that I loved. Now, if you've not heard the story of the loaves and the fishes, that's okay. But there's a story that Jesus went to give a sermon, and at this point, his popularity was climbing. His popularity was exploding, like Taylor Swift exploding. Everybody's talking about this Jesus guy. They're all flocking over to go hear him talk because he gives the word. He gives good word. He's healed people. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. Taylor Swift popular, right? And one time he is surrounded by people, like thousands of people. And they realize it's midday. These people are sitting here. They've got to be hungry. Jesus says, what do we got? What can we feed these people? We brought them here, or they came here to see me. What do we got for these people? His followers come up with 2 loaves of bread and 5 fish. That's not going to feed these thousands of people. Nope, never going to happen. Now, the version I heard as a young child was that Jesus went alakazam, magic potion, wands, whatever, which I never quite understood. And there was enough to feed everybody. But later in my life, I heard another story, which is also magical, that the teachings of Christ about loving and sharing moved the other people who had come to share what they had. Now, anyone who's ever packed a picnic for a family knows that you tend to over prepare. You have, instead of the half loaf of bread you actually need, you have a whole loaf of bread. Or instead of a half pound of cheese that would all you need for sandwiches, you have a full pound of cheese. So there's almost always enough for a few extra people. What if those who had enough shared? And all of a sudden there was enough for everybody. Now, it's not the magic of Jesus going abracadabra, but it is the magic of teaching love and sharing and peace, creating opportunity. No, it doesn't always have to be through love and magic and peace, by the way. My favorite storybook as a little kid was Stone Soup. I know because my family has told me the story of how many times our name appeared in the sign out in the library on that one book. Why we didn't just buy a copy, I have absolutely no idea. But I remember we signed it out of the library and it felt like we signed it out a lot. And I must have been very young when we were doing this because I generally remember it being read to me. So it's a story of, in this version, and I've heard other versions since then, three pirates traveling through the woods like pirates do. Again, doesn't entirely make sense. And they come to a village and they're hungry. But the people shutter their doors because they don't know why these pirates have come to their village after wandering through the woods. I'd be suspicious too. And the pirates say, "Does anyone have anything we can eat? We don't have any money, but maybe we could do something to help or whatever." Nope, doors closed. We don't have anything to share. Nothing, nothing. Okay. So one pirate, and every time the pirates talked, by the way, they would say, "Lunch," said pirate number one. "Lunch," said pirate number two. "Lunch," said pirate number three. That's what made it a lovely story to read to a child. But anyway, these pirates say, "I've got a magic soup stone, so we'll just make our own soup. It'll be great." And they find a cauldron and they start a fire and they ask for help getting water. They find somebody who will help them with that much. And then they add their soup stone and they start to cook it. Oh, wow, this is going to be so good. They build up this soup. They build up this magical soup they're going to make with this magical soup stone. You know what would make this even better? If somebody had a bone, like just an old meat bone that we could just cook in there and just make the broth a little bit richer. Somebody found one. Now there starts to be an aroma of meat to the soup. You know what make it even better? We had some carrots. They kept doing this, and one by one, person would contribute carrots or potatoes or whatever you have. And all of a sudden, there was this huge cauldron of soup, and the whole village ate, including pirate number one, pirate number two, and pirate number three. That was not done out of love and goodness. It was done out of a bit of trickery, but sharing the light, sharing their creativity, they fed an entire town that was feeling they didn't have enough to share. Cool, huh? So as we count down to the longest day of the year if you're in the southern hemisphere, or the shortest day of the year if you're in the northern hemisphere, find a way to share your light or your shade if you're in the longest day of the year, and really enjoy this time of year. Count it down, look for your blessings, and help somebody who really needs it. Hold a friend. And that's what I did yesterday with my friend who had experienced trauma recently. I just held her. She cried. I'm glad she had the vulnerability to share with me, and I'm glad she was able to open up. There's a whole lot more to that story, but that's her story to tell, not mine. But do know you're not the only one experiencing darkness, both literal and metaphorical. And if you aren't experiencing that darkness, if you can revel in it, find a way to share that. It's a month away. You've got time to plan. And planning is unfortunately going to help you out. Even if you're not a planner, it's okay. And until then, stay hydrated and take good care of yourself because that makes everything more dealable. If you are underrested, underfed, or not feeding yourself good things and staying hydrated, all these life challenges get a whole lot more difficult. Also helps you stay young because your skin knows if you're not hydrated. Trust me, I've had enough estheticians tell me that now I believe it. So take care of yourself, stay hydrated, and we'll talk to you again next week. Until then, have a great week, and I'll look for you to tell me how you're getting ready and facing the darkness on social media. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.